Hey everybody, welcome back to tutorial number 6 on creating your email machine. We have a couple of topics that we'd like to talk to you about. First one is continuing to create that custom email. How do you write that code? We'll talk about variables and how to use variables inside of other variables. We'll talk about referencing sheets and cells using the range method in VBA. And then last, we'll talk about actually creating a button. So this way, when you want to send your emails and you want to send one email or you want to send a million emails, you press a button and then all of your emails and reports and attachments will go out. I'm going to show you how to do that today. So again, if you like today's episode and you like our tutorials, please remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and give me a big thumbs up. And without further ado, let's get started.
So when we last left off, we created this code which will create the email. This code will not require you to create any settings, and we talked about this last time, that there's something called early binding and late binding. And early binding means that you're going to reference the object library. But in late binding, you're not going to reference the object library, and it's easier when you're going to be sharing this tool with somebody else. They're not going to have to create any settings or do anything. You'll just be able to give it to them, and the tool will run and work properly on any computer with Excel and Outlook. So for the purposes of this tutorial, we will continue to only use late binding. So let's just run the tool. Let's run this code. Let's see how it works. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to press, and like magic, the email comes up. Now the question is, this is going to be the real email. I want to be able to craft the email. Here's the subject, dear, and then the person's name, and then the first paragraph, the whole email will be here. And ultimately, really what I want to do is I want to be able to assign all of these people. These are our staff members. These are their email addresses. Here are their supervisors, and we're going to CC their supervisors. We're going to be assigning them to these schools, in these rooms, and these teaching assignments. And so what we want to do is we want to craft an email that crafted email will go here with the subject, the dear, the first paragraph, and we want to be able to send an email to each one of those people, CC their supervisor, and have that done automatically. So in this tutorial, we're going to be using variables a lot. And if you remember from a previous tutorial, a variable is just the name of an object or range or value that we want to use again and again and again. So instead of having, saying this cell number, what we're going to do is we're going to give each one of these items here a variable. We're going to assign a variable. Before we assign the variable, if you remember, we always like to declare the data type. So for each of ours, all of these are going to be strings. So we're going to say dim subject as string. Now the reason I use the word subject as the variable is because it's easier for me to remember. I could call this anything I want. If I wanted to just call it X, and X from now on would represent whatever in here, that would be okay. And the computer would be fine with it. But we as humans, we like to be able to better understand the code, so we're going to use words that make sense to us. So we're going to say dim subject as string, dim dear as string. Now when we write the code, we're going to be sending it to somebody, right? So we're going to be saying dear so-and-so. Well, that so-and-so is this person. It's going to go down the list, but for our purposes right now, we're going to use the first person here. So I'm going to say dim staff as string. And I also want to use that person's email, so I'm going to say dim staff email as string. Dim staff CC as string. Dim, let's just say school as string. Dim class as string. Dim teaching assignment as string. So now, still, Excel doesn't know what string. Remember, a string is a set of letters or numbers. And still, Excel doesn't know, well, okay, the staff name. Well, which staff name? We have to tell it to Excel. We have to say specifically. For our purposes, we're going to use only this first person on this list. So here's how we do this. We're going to indicate and specify what all of this means. So subject equals whatever in this cell. So first of all, what sheet is this? This is main, and so main is sheet 5. So we're going to write sheet 5 dot. Now when we want to reference a cell, what we use is the word range. We're not going to use the word cell, we're going to use the word range. And then it's followed by parenthesis, quotation marks, and let's take a look at the cell location. So this whatever in here is going to be here. This is the cell address, which is I3. So I'm going to write I3, close quotation marks, close parentheses, and then we finish it with value. So the value of whatever in sheet 5, range or cell I3 is here. Now in VBA, when we write range, that could refer to one cell or it could refer to many cells. We could even say I3 to H3 or multiple cells. So it's a range of cells, and in our situation here it's just one cell. So let's continue. We have dear equals, and we know that it's this word here, which is H7. So we're going to just go ahead and copy this and save a little bit of time, and then we'll change it. So again, it's this word. We see the cell address is H7, so let's just change that. And then the staff equals, I'm going to put quotation marks here for now, just so it doesn't throw an error. I'm going to go back here. So what sheet is this? This is sheet 3, and it's range or cell A2. So it's sheet 3, A2. And let's just copy this so we don't have to keep copying it. And the staff email equals, the staff email is B2. Staff CC equals right here, which is C2. And then we have school, which would be D2. and then we have class, which equals E2, and then it's here E2, and then F2 for teaching assignment. Now we're going to turn. Let's go back to the main, and we still have to determine this one right here. This is going to be the first paragraph, so let's declare that dim first paragraph. And we're actually not going to be, these are only later on going to just indicate whether we want to send the school name, class, and teaching assignment within the email. This is not actually going to show that it's not actually going to show it, the actual assignment. So we're going to skip these for now. We are going to say dim second par as string. We almost forgot to declare the type, the data type on this one. And then let's go to dim third paragraph as string. And just to make it consistent, let's just say par. And so we still have to indicate for the rest of these as well. So first par equals, and this would be sheet 5, so let's just copy something. Let's copy this one, make it easy. Now first paragraph, put our cursor right there, and we see it's H11. Then we have second par equals H21. And then third par equals H what? 25. So let's save this. And now what we're going to do is we're going to construct the entire email. So the body of the email is really going to consist of a number of other variables. So let's go ahead, let's dim email body as string. And then we're going to say email body equals, and instead of calling this by now the cell or the range, now we can just put it together as a set of variables. So a variable could hold other variables. So we have dir, and to concatenate and put all of the variables together into one, we're going to use the ampersand. So dir and staff, right? Because we would want to say something like Dear Jack Ackert. So we're going to continue. We're going to say dear, and we're going to, let's add the first paragraph and first par and second par and third par. So let's bring this over here so you can see that. So now, instead of putting let's bring this over here so you can see this a little bit easier. So now instead of writing out the body of the email like this, what we can do is we can put email body. And remember from the last video, if you want to keep the signature, you're going to have to write it like this: email body, which is the variable which has the dear, the name, the first, second, and third paragraph, and then you want to also include this again. And we could even take this out since this is a with statement. Okay, we can leave that in there, it doesn't really matter. But by doing it like this, this is going to keep that signature, because in reality the email already contains some text, which is the signature by default. So now let's go ahead and let's run this code. And there you go. You see this all right here. Now the issue is that all of that text is here, but it's on different, it's all on one line. So what we want to do is we want to have line breaks. So let's close this out and let's just finish it. The 2 is now going to be the staff email, remember, because this is the variable for the person who's going to be getting the email, staff email. And then we're going to say the CC line is going to be staff CC, and the subject is now going to refer to the subject as subject. Notice that when we use variables, we don't put variables in quotation marks. So now when we run this code, you're going to see the email, the CC, and the subject. Let's try it. And you can see it worked flawlessly. Everything went into the right place. We have the 2, the CC line, the subject, and the body of the text. Now let's go ahead, let's show you how we can format this text so it's on different lines. So let's close this out. Now remember, what we really have is an HTML body. So we have to use HTML to actually develop this email body. So because it is HTML, the code for a line break is this right here. In quotation marks between these greater than and less 2 brackets, write BR, and this indicates a line break. So what we're going to do is we're going to say dear, and then here we actually need a space. We don't want a line break, but we want a space. So we're going to add a space like that. Dear so-and-so. And then we could even add a colon or a comma. So remember, ampersand and comma. Now we want a line break. So let's add a line break. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Copy. And between this, we're going to have another ampersand. And then this. And that should be correct. So now let's run the code. Let's see if the line breaks go through. And there you go. Dear Jack Ackert, we thank you for your assistance and support during these difficult times. There's a line break, but maybe we want to add another line break just to make sure that there's a little bit more space. It's a little easier to read. Now we can go back and take a look, and we know that we need to add a space or a line break between where it finishes with times and sincerely, which is the second and third paragraph. Now there's already a line break, and right now it's only adding one break, but it's not adding a second break that we would like. If you need to add a second break or a second line break to make it look nice, you do not have to add, you don't have to copy this and do this. You could, if you'd like, you could just go ahead and write it like that. Or another way that you could do it is simply just adding another BR like this. Now let's test it. And there you go. So this is how you would go ahead and you would create that email. Now if you notice when we ran the code, what we saw was Richard is still on the same line. However, when we go back to the Excel workbook, we see that there really is a line break within the cell. The reason this line break is not being picked up is because this is HTML. If this were just a, rich text or just plain text, you would see the Richard being on the next line. So the workaround for this is we could write the email in plain text, or we can keep it as HTML and we can remove this piece right here. We can just remove that word. And I'm going to remove the word, and the reason for doing that is because later on I'm going to be showing you how you can create an email with different colors. If we use plain text, we would not be able to use different colors, highlights, fonts. Plain text would be plain text. So what I really want to do is I want to make sure that I can show you and you can send emails using different text. So let's go back. We fixed that. Let's see how it works. So let's see how it works. And see, now it says sincerely, comma, and now it keeps the signature anyway. So it's completely fine. So I'm going to remove this. Now here's the last thing we need to do. We need to create a button. So let's go back over here and let's create a button. We go back to the Developer tab, Insert. Let's just use a regular button. And I'm going to put the button, let's say, right over here. So now when I click this button, it's not doing anything. Like we said before, we need to connect this button to this sub. Now this sub is called the Outlook email _late. So let's go back. I'm going to right click, assign macro, and I'm going to assign it for this one right here. And now I'm also going to change the title, edit text. and I'm going to call it send the email. And we can even get a little fancy and add one of those. Let's make it a little shorter. Okay. Now, let's see if it works. I click here, and like magic, I've created the email. So in the next tutorial, we'll show you how to add an attachment, and then we're going to also show you how to loop through all of these names. So this way, you're not going to actually have to click and change the code for each one of these names. You'll press the email once, and then it will go ahead and send to all of the people.